There are some things in my yarn stash that have been sleeping with the fishes for far too long. Hi, I'm Rosie, welcome to my channel, and this week I'm diving into unknown waters, discovering 3 deep stash projects with the aim of casting on and hopefully reeling in something big. Welcome to Swatch Week. I think I need to start with conquering this fear. It's not even a fear. I bought this yarn 2 years ago, and this will be the 6th pattern I have bought for it, which is embarrassing. Actually embarrassing. It'll also be the 3rd that I'm casting on with this yarn, and I've frogged the other attempts. And oh my gosh, it's a gorgeous yarn, and I don't know why. I just haven't been able to follow through with it, but I'm so determined. For a while, I was really set on the Dagmar pattern. Literally, I bought it and printed it out. That's how determined I was. And then I noticed something that I just can't get past, and that isn't a specifically Dagmar jacket thing. It's just all drop shoulder cable patterns. When a pattern is made with drop shoulder cables, there is a point where the body and the sleeves connect. The cables come at each other perpendicularly, and often there's like a batch of moss stitch or something at the edge on most cable designs, and I just don't like the way it looks. And I haven't been able to unsee it with the Dagmar. I look at the Dagmar and I love it, but then when I see that bit of it, I couldn't, if I made it, it would bother me too much. So I've been looking for alternatives, and I have 3 options. The first is the Maisie cardigan by Emily Y. Chen. This is gorgeous, and I think is a lace weight held with a mohair, which is potentially the only reason I'm not going to do this one, because this is a DK, and a chunky DK at that. So the Maisie cardigan is just too fine a gauge. So maybe I'll come back to it at another point, but not this time. The second option is the Wild Cardigan by Lily Kate France. That is, unfortunately, swings in the opposite direction in that it's for an Aran weight. Now this is a chunky DK, and actually I need to check the wraps per inch on it, because I think it's kind of somewhere between a DK and a worsted, but I need to see actually factually. I also would probably do quite a lot of modification to this cardigan, because I wouldn't want the collar, so I would do something different. And I think if I'm gonna make something, I don't want to have to modify it too much, because otherwise I might as well just pick cables I like and design my own. But I don't think I'm quite there yet in terms of cable cardigan experience. Now the 3rd option, and as you might guess this is the one I'm going for, is the Cara Cardigan by Ellie Knits, or Lenitz, I never know. Now this is for a DK and has an extra specialness to it, because the Cara Cardigan, in the first bit of the description, wait, I'll read it exactly because it's really nice. It says, Cara means friend in Irish, and the Cara Cardigan can truly be a loyal friend. This is Donegal tweed. It's from Ireland, and it's green, so it just feels appropriate for this. Also, this is the most kind of rustic looking of the choices, and this is quite a kind of rustic yarn. It is merino, it's very soft, it's not going to be scratchy at all, but it's got a lot of color variation and flex in it that I think will make it look quite rustic. I need a different word to that, but you know what I mean. So that is what I'm going for. I should have done this before I bought the cardigan, but hey, I am going to check the wraps per inch on this, just to check that before I do my swatch, I'm not definitely going to be completely out, because that would be very sad, and I would have to completely reevaluate my life's choices. If you don't know what I'm doing here, there are some really good videos that explain about wraps per inch that I will link to in the description. But essentially, you can find out the weight of a yarn by wrapping it round a ruler or some sort of, you can get specific tools for doing this, but it works any ruler, anything that measures that is solid enough to wrap yarn around, and you push the yarn together just so it's like touching. You don't want it bunched up, you want it lying next to the next strand, and then you count how many times you wrap around per inch, and that tells you how many that tells you the information that you need to know. It doesn't matter how wide the thing that you're wrapping it around, because it's to do with the width of the yarn. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so the yarn for the Cara cardigan is listed at 11 wraps per inch, and I've got 12. So essentially, hopefully, I should meet gauge with this on the right needle size. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is actually slightly uneven in the way it's spun. It has points where it's quite thin and points where it's quite thick. So I think probably on average, it'll work out, I'm sure. Anyway, I need some 4mm needles and I need to cast on. The gauge is listed in rice stitch for the gauge, so I don't actually have to do it in the pattern, which I'm kind of grateful for, because having to swatch in a cable pattern it's just a lot of brain to do versus just being able to do a repetitive stitch for a whole swatch. So I should be able to get this done fairly quickly, hopefully today. I'm going into town to see a friend today, and then we're going to see the Brighton Philharmonic Orchestra this evening as well. So it should be a nice fun day. I've been to see BPO quite a lot, and they usually keep the lights up enough to be able to see your knitting, when the idea is that people can read the program because there's information about the music that's good to be able to read along while you're listening. But I just like it because it means that I can knit. Even if I get judgmental looks from other people there, it's perfectly right. It helps me concentrate on the music and I really enjoy it. So, right, so I'm gonna get casting on my swatch. I can't really get a better angle. Good morning. It's been a few days. I wasn't very well for a couple of days, but I did finish my swatch. I haven't blocked it yet. I have kind of a pile of things that need blocking that I'm kind of adding to. I'm thinking I'm probably going to block all of my swatches together. Actually, let me measure this now. 6, 28, 30. Okay, so there's exactly 30 rows. See, I just counted 30 stitches. I'm gonna have to wait till this is blocked, but it might be on gauge. To be honest, I quite like it. I would rather change which size I'm making maybe than have to play around with needles too much, but we'll see. I may block this before I was planning to. This evening I have craft club, which is once a month, and I very much look forward to it. It's one of my favourite things that I do in my social calendar at the moment. I need what I make to be fairly simple because I will be distracted by talking to people and what everyone else is doing. So I am going to do the Honeybee Bumblebee Cardi. I've not decided quite on the name yet first. This series of yarn, this collection came out last summer at some point from West Yorkshire Spinners. I got an email. Don't subscribe to yarn company emails, guys. It's a bad idea. You'll just end up buying yarn. I got an email. I saw the full collection. This is a gorgeous colour set. I love it. And I immediately wanted to make something in stripes in either the greens or the yellows. And I bought one skein of, I think, just this darker colour even, knit up a swatch, fell in love, and ended up buying 6 of them, 3 of each colour, so that I could make a stripy cardigan. It is a 4-ply fingering weight yarn, so it's not very thick, so it's going to be a summery cardigan, and especially in these colours I just think perfect. I actually keep getting served an ad on Instagram in which the woman who's talking is wearing a cardigan that is exactly what I want to model this after, but it's got like a double knit but quite narrow button placket and collar, and it's beautiful. So I know I want to make drop shoulder, and I know what I want to do for the placket and stuff, so I'm pretty excited about this. I just haven't ended up, I've had so many other things I've been more excited about, and this is definitely going to be a summer project. I don't think I'm going to cast this on for a while, but what I would like to do is figure out the kind of pattern for myself, write myself a basic pattern, because I'm going to self-draft this, and from the swatch I can do the maths for that. So I need to do a stripy swatch. I also don't know exactly how thick I want to make the stripes. I think I want them fairly narrow, but I don't want them so narrow that they make your eyes go a bit skew. I believe this was done on 3mm needles, and I quite like it, so I think I'm going to go with 3mm needles. I don't really want to go any smaller, so that feels like a good size to me. Obviously I'm going to have to go smaller for the facings. I don't know what they're called, you know, the ribbing, the placket, the collar. There must be a name for those, right? I should say these are the colour Honey and Nectar, which obviously I have to do something bee related. But yeah, they're just so perfect colour wise. I've already wound this one up in Nectar, so I really quickly, before I have to leave this morning, have to wind up a honey skein. So I better get a move on with that. Finished the swatch. I love this so much. It still needs blocking, but I have like a whole pile of this plus more things that need blocking, so I'm going to do those today, I think. And this I will do with, I realised I hadn't really talked about how I do swatches, and you might be looking at me swatching in this video and be interested, so I thought I'd talk about it for a second, because obviously with this I've just done the plain rice stitch, but this is a stockinette swatch. It's just plain stockinette back and forth. It's going to be a cardigan, so I didn't have to worry about swatching in the round. I do know that my pearls tend to be slightly longer than my knits, so I have sometimes compensated for that, but generally I don't worry about it too much. But what I do is a couple rows of garter stitch and garter stitch around the edge, because obviously stockinette curls loads, and so that just helps compensate for that, and also allows for sort of an extra bit at the edge, where if you're measuring your swatch you should try and measure it nice in the center of a large piece of fabric, because sometimes the tension at the edges can be a bit different. At least that's my experience, and I've heard other people talk about that as well. I also try and make my swatches fairly sizable. I'm not a super patient person, so sometimes that's difficult, but when I'm purely, the whole goal is the swatch, I find it a bit easier. Like this week, I mean, these are still not huge swatches for how big you could make them, but I think they're reasonable in their size. They're about 4 by 4 inches, 10 by 10 centimeters. So big enough for my purposes. Anyway, let's talk about this swatch in particular. Obviously, as you can see, I've done slightly different size stripes, and that's because this swatch has a slightly different purpose than the other two swatches I'm doing this week. This one that I've already done, obviously, the purpose is to see if I match the pattern swatch, as is the purpose of the other swatch that I'm going to do for the CatKnit. Whereas this, because it's self-drafted, I just have to make sure that A, I like the material drape gappiness from the needles that I choose, and B, that I like the colours together and the size of the stripes. So I think the main thing that I need to decide on is which size of stripes I like the most. I definitely don't like the first because I think they're just a bit wide. I want to essentially go for as narrow as I can without it potentially making your eyes go a bit skewy. And I also have kind of a vision in my head. So I'm torn between these two options, which is 2 rows and 4 rows. It has to be even because if I'm not going to be cutting the yarn every time and having to sew in 1,000 ends, then I want to be able to carry the yarn up each side and therefore need to end on the same side each time. So it needs to be an even number of rows that I choose. Otherwise, I would probably go for maybe somewhere in between, maybe an odd number. I do like an odd number, and I won't elaborate on that. I do not need to explain myself. But yes, I'm torn between 2 and 4. I think I might be leaning towards 4, just because I think I like this. I like the look of them, and I don't want the stripes to be too narrow, like I said, to make your eyes maybe go a bit screwy. And I think that the 2 rows definitely has that potential. I'm going to block it, see how I think it looks, check that I like the final blocked material as it is. I think this is probably going to be perfect. It's quite an airy, light gauge, but still a solid, not wholly material. The plan is to have it be a sort of summery spring cardigan to throw on that isn't too warm. So I don't really want to make the fabric any denser either. Plus, this is already 3mm needles, and a whole cardigan that I think is probably going to be a bit oversized on 3mm needles is quite the task anyway. I haven't blocked this one yet, but I've only got one more swatch on my list to complete. And I will admit, I have been putting this one off. There is a reason that it's the last one that I'm going to be getting to. And that is because I just have a mental block in my mind. Last year on my birthday, I bought the most gorgeous yarn. This is West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite. It is so soft and luxurious. I've actually made a top in it that ended up getting felted, but that's another story, another tragedy. Not another tragedy. This isn't going to be a tragedy, okay? It's going to be fine. So I know this knits up in a lovely fabric, but I also know that it takes ages to knit up, even for a small summer top. So that has been part of the mental block in my mind. The other mental block is, I'll show you the other yarn first because I need you to see my thoughts. So these are 2 very nice mohair yarns. They are earth yarns in, I can't remember the colour names, but I will put them somewhere. And these I got to hold, not with this, but as the contrast for the pattern in the CatKnit sweater. And I have actually done a gauge swatch already, and it's perfect. I don't know why I haven't made this sweater yet. Look how gorgeous it's going to be. The drape, the feel of the fabric, it's going to be the most gorgeous sweater I will ever own. And maybe knowing that has put too much pressure in my mind on this project. This was the first proper bit of colour work that I ever did, even just in this swatch. And I was so proud of myself for figuring it out. And then I finished the swatch, I blocked it, I measured it, and it was off gauge. And I will say I'm quite privileged. I'm not often off gauge. I'm quite often very much on gauge, or I know how to modify things enough. But my experience with colour work is not great enough to be able to figure that out and confidently create this off gauge, especially as the yarn is expensive and I want it to be something that I can wear. And I'm also aware that it being a tiny gauge is going to be a big time commitment. So I'm just scared of it going wrong, basically. This looks a bit like a sock. And yes, you would be forgiven for thinking that. I knit it on my Chalgu shorties in the round because I wanted to make sure that I was swatching in the round. And I'm glad I did, because I now know that my pearls are a bit longer because of that's the case for most people, but it definitely is a thing and is even more so affected when I do colour work. But I also think that I wasn't as experienced as I am now in short circumference knitting. So I think it's possible that with the combination of the colour work and the short circumference knitting, that this, if I were to reknit this even on the same needles, now would be a completely different gauge. So I think where I'm going to start is knitting a swatch on the pattern recommended needles and see if I'm still off gauge, or whether, because I've done more colour work, I'm more experienced, and I am probably more comfortable with this concept now. I don't think I'm going to do the colour work until I've done a swatch in the round just in the stockinette, but I also need to measure this and see how much off gauge I am. So let's do that first. I have my pattern here. I love a printed pattern. This one already looks so battered and I haven't even made it. Oh dear. So something I like about this pattern is that it tells you to size up your needles for the colour work, which I don't think a lot of colour work patterns do, although correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't done a huge amount of them. But when I did my first pair of colour work socks, I sized up, and I think in the future I'll size up. I went up half a size. So I think next time, or half a millimetre, and next time I'll go up a whole millimetre, I think, because they fit me, but they're a little bit tight still. So I can feel this. It's not too bad, but it is tight. So the conclusion is yes. My hypothesis that I was quite tight because I was new to all of this technique is almost certainly contributing to it. But I'm also tempted to go up a needle size immediately, or half a millimetre immediately, because that would definitely help. And I'm so far under, my stitches are so much closer together that makes sense to me in this moment. And this is a fairly dense fabric. I quite like the fabric that it's giving, but I don't think it is sensible to stay on a smaller size needle and knit it way smaller just because I quite like this fabric. If I knit it on bigger needles and hate it, that's a different matter. I don't know that it's a good idea to gauge swatch again, just in the round like I did here. I think what I might do is do what I've done in other cases and do all knit stitches and then put the yarn to the beginning of the row and just let it sort of have a long tail between the two. And then as long as I make it wide enough that I can exclude those edge stitches where the tension will be off because the yarn's pulling from the other side, I think that will be a better indication of what my tension will be like for knitting in the round for a full sweater as opposed to knitting in the round for like a sock. So here's the plan. Do the stockinette swatch in half a millimetre up, or maybe even a quarter of a millimetre up from what the pattern recommends. Block it, check my gauge. If my gauge matches, proceed with a colourwork swatch in the same style with the needles half a millimetre up, or maybe even a full millimetre up from my gauge swatch, which in the pattern the needle sizes go up by half millimeters. So I would be increasing by the same amount. I'm not a thinking person. I am a doing person. I just need to get on with it. I'm yapping. I just need to get on and do the swatch. But first, I'm going to block my swatches that I've already got. So I get that hit of completion. Also, they're going to take ages to dry anyway. So. I have a confession. You probably saw in the past clips, but I kind of decided I didn't want to do another CatKnit swatch, and that if I was on gauge for the normal bit, it would probably work out fine. So here I am. I've cast on and I'm loving it. This is maybe one of the most addictive things to knit. I've dropped stitches. Oh, crisis averted. Right, keeping these needles way away. I have made some significant progress. I've got the little heads peeking out. I'm very pleased with how it's coming along. I haven't measured my gauge, to be honest. I don't want to jinx it at this point. It is what it is, and I will figure it out later. I am doing a whole vlog on just this project, so I'm gonna leave this here, and if you want to see that, you can see that when it's coming out. A little exciting kind of pre-announcement. I and my husband are adopting a second cat, so I am preparing for her arrival. She arrives in a couple of weeks now, and I am thinking I'm probably going to end up working on this in the time off we have to settle her in. One of the things they said, it's great to be doing stuff in the room with her while she's sort of settling in, but not sort of giving her any attention, just ignoring her. So I think I'm just going to be doing a lot of sitting in the room and knitting. So I will definitely film some of that if and when she's ready and we're ready, because it's going to be a bit of a chaotic couple of weeks, I think, accommodating her into the house and keeping her separate from Aslan, who is our pre-existing our first cat, who the colours of this jumper are based on. Maybe I'll have to do a second one in her colours. I haven't said her name. Her name is Posy, and she is the prettiest cat. I love her. I literally fell in love with her the second that I saw her, and I had to keep my cool because there was a whole application process we had to go through. We're adopting her through the Pack project, who have been amazing so far in the process. It's quite a rigorous process, I guess. from my knowledge, it seemed fairly standard, but there was like a whole interview and things that they had to check that we were going to be an appropriate home for Posey. So we were never guaranteed to get her. So I had to guard my heart a little bit, but I honestly have loved her since the second I saw her. So I'm so excited for her to be arriving and to be working on this while she does. I had a lovely time away for the weekend and seeing family and all of that. I always really enjoy it. I went to Franklin's again, which if you saw my video finishing my whips at the end of last year, I went there for the first time and I spent hours there. I spent less time this time. I just went to pick out some buttons for a dress that I bought on Vinted, but just had black buttons and I wanted to swap them for metal buttons. But if you're ever in Colchester, go to Franklin's. Spend all your time there. It's worth it. It's got just so many craft supplies. Literally anything you could ever want, it's got it. So 10 out of 10 recommendation. I think I'm going to wrap up here because I have finished my swatches. I am very pleased because I've cast on one of the projects fully, which was the goal of Swatch Week, was to get to the point where I could cast on confidently. Like I'd done all of the preamble and I know what needles and yarn and size and all of that I was going to make. And I've done that. I've cast this one on. The green cable, I've done the swatch, I'm on gauge, so I know I'm good to go with that one. And I also have the swatch for the stripes. All of my swatches are already pinned behind me, but I'll put in a little picture of the stripes because I'm still not sure which width of stripe I want to go for, and I think it's going to be a little while before I cast this one on. So I would love your opinions please, in the comments on whether I should go for probably the medium or the small. I some days I look at it and I go definitely the smallest ones, and some days I look at it and I go definitely the medium ones. I'm definitely not going to go for the largest of the sizes that I did. I kind of just did those ones so that I knew I definitely didn't want the wider ones. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you've not subscribed. Tell me what you're working on below. What things do you desperately want to cast on? This is your sign. Do your swatches. Make it into a fun little thing. Things don't have to be just the chore. You can make a whole thing of it. Give yourself that little bit of joy and whimsy. Make it like it's a whole Discovery Channel week. Be silly and find joy in what you do. I hope you have a lovely week and I'll see you soon. Bye.